Hello everyone, welcome to our video on colouring skin. This video builds upon the previous few in the series, and we're going to be using masks and solid colour layers today. But you can use any process that you find works for you with your software. I'm using Photoshop CC. So if we look at my file, the layers, you can see there's quite a few layers, and the more layers we use, the more challenging it can be to organise things so that you can find them and work efficiently, because it can be time consuming to colour skin particularly, and efficiency is something that will really help your process. What I have designed is a template as a starting point for people who are learning to colour skin, and you can download this from our files section, and it's called Skin Tone Group Template, and it's a PSD file, but I know there are quite a few software programs that will be able to open the PSD file with layers. If you download file and open in Photoshop or your software, you'll see on the top there is an instruction layer. You can turn that off once you know how to follow the instructions, and then there is a group. We have numbered solid colour layers. So we have everything nested inside a group, and the group itself has a mask. And this is what I refer to as a master mask. And we'll certainly work through how this works. So I've prepared a base skin tone, and you can see soft light, and it's at 100% opacity. I have a blue layer, soft light layer blend mode at 20% opacity. And of course you can change this to suit your style, your image. Every image will change its needs. Contouring for the darker areas of the skin is in multiply blend mode at 30%. Highlights are in overlay at 30% set for you as well, and there's a red toning overlay mode at 30%. So the instruction layer is here. Instructions say start with number 1, and then we go down 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to work through and show you how this can be used. Now, don't worry that these colours may not be what you want. It's very easy to change, and I'll be showing you that as we go along. So these are the colours that were recommended when I was very first starting colorising. Dee shared her colours and blend modes, and I found it very helpful when I wasn't quite sure how to set things up with a workflow. So workflow is the term that refers to the process, layers and structure that you might use. Okay, now how do we join this blank template to our image? There's a few different ways. You can open it as I have done here, select both layers and copy the layers, go to our image and then paste the layers on top of the image, the base image you want to colour, and the text we can just resize if you want to follow along with that on and off as you need to. Now solid colour layers are size independent. So that's one of the benefits of having this template set, that it just works for any size image. Now if I just remove that for the moment, another way, a tip that can be very helpful in accessing the template is to add it to your Photoshop CC cloud library. And if you don't have Photoshop CC, that doesn't matter. You can certainly use the copy and paste. But if you're going to be doing a lot of colorizing images, it can certainly save time to have your skin template set up in your library. And to do that, select the two layers. And with the two layers selected, we're just going to drag them up to our libraries panel. You may need to have your libraries panel visible from the window. Now when we drag this into the library section, you can see the area underneath turns white, and then you can release the cursor, and that's moved both the instruction layer and our solid color group into the cloud. Here we have the next document, which is our starting image, and we still have access easily to our colouring layers. All we need to do now is right click and place layers, and it sits above. And again, I'm just going to minimize the instructions so that you'll be able to read. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, now we're ready to start the skin. Before beginning, I just would have a look and see if there's any repairs that need to be undertaken. And it's a challenging image because there's sharp focus, and equally there's areas of very soft out of focus area. When I look, this version has some very harsh edges, so I'm just going to use the blur tool and see if I can soften. Yeah. Nope, still not enough, so then I'll go to the smudge tool. Just that dark line. It's going to be irritating through the area of low focus. When you use the smudge tool, I'm only using a fairly low strength and opacity on the brush, but choose the direction that you use the brush, because it can change where it's taking the pixels to and from. Okay, if I want this area to be lighter, I would drag from this area into that darker area. For example, here. Oops. So I'm just softening that dark edge. If you're not confident, I'd suggest making a duplicate layer before starting on that. Yeah. So it's important to maintain the focal depth. So if this was out of focus here and out of focus there, it's not logical to have something that's sharply in focus here when the eye is in focus at the back. So just a bit of time of correcting that would be helpful. Okay, now instructions say start with number 1. So number 1 is our master mask, and what we're going to do is colour the entire skin area. Make sure the image is selected. Because of the low focus, we're going to have to do a bit of painting, but it's okay. And we can refine that with a select. But first of all, we're going to go to the paint bucket. If you press D while you're here, you'll get the default colours for black and white. So D, and then X will swap background and foreground. And you'll see me do that quite frequently working on masks. And the benefit of masks is you only have 2 colours that you need to paint with, black or white, to hide or show. So here we're going to drop white and that's fairly harsh. Particularly through this area, I would probably add quite a large feather. I'll still paint. I'll fix that in a moment. Okay, so now we can use our brush. I'm using a soft brush, a default soft brush which has 0 hardness. And currently I'm on 50% opacity, but I might drop that down as well because, as I've mentioned, this area is out of focus and there will be colour bleed or overlap naturally as the eye adjusts. And I'll just details and then we can come back and refine. Okay, let's make sure there's nothing on the iris pupil and get it back in there. Now I do include the waterline as part of the skin and the inside there. Let's drop down, oops, black to just, skin colour will show through. But it won't be So by reducing opacity to 10%, flow to 50 at least. Okay. Now we'll be able to see the benefit of having our master mask. Everything underneath that mask is limited to showing only where the skin shows. So if we start with our blue colour, I'm going to go quite large. You can watch the mask. The blue is the deoxygenated blood cells that are moving around, which is the challenge. Okay. Now contour, it's the darker areas. And we can, in the shadow areas, just add some. Now you can see I'm not really being very careful about where I press. I can paint over here and it's not going to show, even though it is showing on the mask, because we are clipped inside the container. And the benefit of that is you can use quite large brush strokes right up to the edge. Okay, so highlight. This adds to the dimension, and if we had an old or damaged photo we were colorising, we would definitely dodge and burn before starting the preparation. Okay, we'll get some red. Right. Again, the very thin skin around this area shows slight redness. Okay. Oh, and a bit of cheek colour perhaps. About. So you could see, just going to drop that mask opacity a little bit over here. A bit of blending. And I think I'll probably just use a bigger brush now and just taper that in. Okay, So we could stop there. But let's add our solid colour. Oops, oh, that mask. I'll get there. And we'll get a you can see this is a large brush and there is some overlap for out of focus areas. Let that feathering control its skin. Alright, let's pick a... Oh, that's quite pleasant. Let's go with that one. Okay. Now, we could leave it there, or we can have a look at refining some of those colours. So if we go within our group, come to the very top layer, I'm going to just add a curves layer. And this will increase the contrast. Nope, not that way. Okay. And I can use just a big brush to make sure that that doesn't go on there. Alright, I'll show you the difference between our start and there. If we're worried about colour shift because of the curve, you can use luminosity blend mode. Just you can play with that a little bit. Okay, so that is the difference with the curve. Now back to our skin tones. If you want to change them, they're definitely just a starting point. Let's have a look. We double click. You can see the hue, colour, saturation and the brightness is here. If you move the dial, you can adjust any of those. And we're seeing a reading of the RGB for this colour, which is this one here, and also the hex colour. And we'll be looking at that more in future classes. You may want to reduce the redness, for example, so I might go to 215. You could just kind of roam around until you found a colour that you liked. Or you could use your swatches. So our solid colour is selected. Let's click on that and you can see that changes. That gives you the opportunity to consider all sorts of different base colours. That's one where we started. Now I happen to have saved these, so your swatch may look different, but you can certainly download colour, standard skin colours from the internet. Now if we go to the contour, you might think that that's quite yellow, so if we change it to a deeper colour, or we could even change the opacity. We could increase the feathering on the contouring by adding a blur. It's just that area there is a bit harsh. On the highlights, so perhaps you'd like it lighter, stronger colours. You can even use white. Change the blend mode to screen if you wish, and then you may have to play with the opacity. Depends on your individual style, depends on the individual image that you're working on. The opacity of your brush as you're using it. And this red has a lot of blue in here, or no blue. The opposite of a lot of blue, a lot of red. So I might often just drop that down. You see it's not a lot. But I quite like it less. Okay, I think we're almost there. A quick word about colour toning from here. If you're worried it's too warm or too cool, you could again just go to the top of your stack for skin, and this any adjustment layer that you place in this container only applies to what is masked and at the opacity that you've masked. So you could use a photo filter. Today I'm going to use Colour Lookup and use the top drop down, and I'm just going to try perhaps crisp warm, and we can put that onto colour mode and drop that down. Even a little bit further, I think. And again, depending on your individual image, you can try the colour toning. Once you're finished, you may want to try it above everything as your global colour adjustment if you wanted it to affect everything. And that has the benefit of harmonising the colours as we've done down here. If we move around and add blue and take green without using a predetermined swatch, images in the skin tone can get slightly out of balance. Well, but just before we finish, there's one other way of identifying these colours, and that's to use a reference image. So here we have some skin. This is the area that I normally look at for mid-tone. So if we take that, it's quite pink, you can see there's a lot. All we need to do is change that, and now we have a completely different look to our skin tone based on an image. We could do the same here for the darker areas. You can see that's quite a bit darker than the mid-tone on the cheek. And so that's the one that we had been using. So that's one way that you can adjust, take the highlights from the other image. When you do that, you may wish to just go back and refine the skin tone, the curves. There we have colorizing skin.